Welcome to the Shift Your Story, Change Your Life podcast. I'm Allie Rose, certified clinical hypnotherapist and subconscious success coach. I help my clients stop self-sabotage and feel safe to create more wealth, worth, and wellness from within. If you find yourself stuck repeating the same unhelpful patterns in your life, health, business, or relationships, even after all the mindset work, this podcast is for you. Each week, you'll hear deep dives into the hidden beliefs shaping your life and live hypno coaching sessions where someone shifts a block in real time. Because willpower isn't the problem, your subconscious story is. And when you shift it at the root, everything else begins to change. So let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to the Shift Your Story, Change Your Life podcast. Today, we're going to be continuing our series on subconscious blocks that hold high achievers back in business. And today, we're going to be focusing on money and sales blocks. And this episode is for everyone who says that they want to make more money, but secretly feels awkward charging, asking for more, or receiving money. But as always, even if you're not in business, I promise you that you will be able to gain a lot from this conversation because money patterns run deep. And I have yet to meet someone who does not have some sort of distorted money story. But before we dive in, as always, Safiya, welcome back. How are you feeling about diving into this topic?
I know I say this every week, so people are probably laughing now, but ironically, I was lying in bed the other morning listening to a podcast about money and subconscious money beliefs and money blocks. And I was just like, I now have so many questions. So when you said we were talking about it this week, I was like, poor Allie, I've got so many questions.
Wonderful. I'm here for it. I'm ready.
Perfect. So let's start with the usual definitions. What do you mean when you talk about money and sales blocks?
Well, I think that money and sales blocks are subconscious beliefs or emotional associations that make it feel unsafe to receive, ask for, or hold on to money. And they often come from childhood, as most beliefs do, cultural conditioning, or past experiences. And so those are a lot of stories, which I'm sure we will dive into more, like being told that money is selfish or evil, or that selling is manipulative. So these beliefs live underneath the surface. So you might say you want more money or more clients, but still undercharge, overdeliver, avoid pitching or selling. And again, a block is not logical, it's emotional, right?
So you said charge, receive, or hold on to, right? And I like that sort of distinction. So let's start with the charging piece. Why do you think that so many business owners struggle to charge for their services or struggle to charge appropriately, shall we say? Because I'm not a huge fan of like charge what you're worth type of thing because I'm like, I am worth more than money,
Right.
but appropriately in the sense that if you are charging well beneath what you would need to sort of get by as a person, then that may not be. So why do you think so many business owners struggle to charge or charge appropriately for their services?
I think it's because so many people, at least in our space of online coaching, their worth is tied to how much they give. So they equate being of service, meaning how much they give,
Mm-hmm.
not how much that they receive, because many coaches and healers grew up learning that being good means being selfless. So receiving money for helping someone can often feel selfish or indulgent or like they're taking advantage of someone. So that's why I feel like so many people, especially within the online coaching and service provider space, struggle to charge.
To me, that sounds very much rooted in what people believe about that exchange for money and their service. Let's think now about receiving or holding on to money. how does that tend to show up?
I'm thinking about the past episode that we did on the fear of success. I think
Mhm,
that receiving or holding on to money, that might mean we all have kind of like thermometers in our minds around receiving or what feels safe or what feels normal for us. Like, what's a normal money temperature for us,
mhm,
right? And so I think that when we receive more than what our internal money temperature is set at,
mhm,
something can kick on in our brain that wants us to immediately lower that internal money thermostat
mhm,
because that's so related to like identity of who we are. And so then what that can look like is if we receive more than what we feel comfortable with, that can start to move into getting rid of that money really quickly, right? Making
mhm,
impulse purchases or
mhm.
spending it in ways that we don't really need to be spending it because there's a part of our system that feels really uncomfortable with receiving and holding on to more money than what our internal money thermostat is set to.
Yeah, I can see that. Now, one of the things I'm curious about, so this is what I was thinking when I was listening to that podcast the other morning. I know a lot of these money stories tie back to things that we may believe about money or people who have money, etc. But I guess for me, I feel like sometimes it also gets tied up in almost the morality of it. So I'll give a personal example. I spent, and I still actually work in healthcare. I spent a long time working in healthcare, and I guess the same would have been true for you when you were purely doing more therapy
Mhm.
and not so much coaching. And I remember I found it difficult to charge. I think because there was a part of me that felt like the system was unfair. Like, I don't want them to have to pay too much if they couldn't afford it. And so a lot of my morality was wrapped up in it. And then as time went on, I almost found it really hard to kind of pull that apart and to kind of separate out the reality of like, there's a cost to this thing. I was working as a part of a larger business that had its own costs and just the reality that this is the world that we live in, right? And so for me, I struggle with I struggle with the fact that my beliefs are tied up into something that feels like morality because then it feels harder making the decision. Then it feels like something that goes into right and wrong territory and not just like a belief that I have.
Right. So, what I would say to that is that yes, absolutely, systems are broken. And the problem is, and we're seeing this play out so clearly within the United States right now, is that, and the whole world's watching, right? And what a disgrace it is that people who have a lot of money, and rather than doing good with their money, rather than using the wealth that they have to change systems to help people who have less than or who are more marginalized, they are making decisions that continue to further marginalize people so
Mm,
that they can buy their next yacht. And the problem is that we vilify billionaires. But
mm-mm,
I believe that money just amplifies who you are as a
mm,
person anyway. And so I believe wholeheartedly that putting more money into the hands of good-hearted people who want to serve others will change the world because I believe that
mm,
wealth amplifies impact. And when people who are healers and helpers thrive, then communities and families and futures will be transformed because they will be able to change systems. And I've seen
mm,
it happen. I've been a part of a micro community where I saw people who were millionaires who shifted and changed systems within a community for the better. They used their money for good, right?
yeah. And I'm glad that you said that because I think it took me a long time to kind of understand that aspect of things and the reality that if you are at the point where you're not even charging enough to sustain yourself, then it's going to be really hard for you to serve anybody else, right? And I think that was what made me kind of understand. It's almost like because that morality idea is out there of like, as you said, people with money are this and that. It almost makes you not realize that what you have is a belief, right?
Right.
It feels like this big binary black and white thing when actually it's just a belief that you have. And if you have other experiences or you see people doing things in a different way, you can kind of step back from it a bit and start to realize, okay, this is a belief that I have. And then, start to change it in a way that, because you're right, there are a lot of people out there who do good.
Right.
And, but if you have that narrative in your head and those beliefs, then it can feel like you're going against your own morality when actually it is just a belief that you have.
Right. Because here's the issue is that the belief that all wealthy people, rich people, billionaires, millionaires are bad, all that does is it keeps you separated from ever becoming one of them.
Mhm.
It only benefits them, right?
Mm,
It benefits them because then if you have that belief, if you carry that belief, if you despise something, you will never become that thing.
mm.
That
Yeah.
keeps you stuck in the cycle of whatever cycle that you are in because you won't want to get close to that. Which means that if you have a heart for service, that you will not be able to amplify your impact, even if that's just the impact within your own family.
Mhm.
Meaning that you have enough money not only to live, but to leave your children something after you pass. I'm not
Mhm.
even talking about like changing systems or changing communities, but I'm talking about having enough money to leave your children something, right?
Mm.
If you have this belief, it is limiting, so limiting for you. And it,
Yeah.
it just continues to further perpetuate the gap between those who have and those who do not, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So how do you find that these blocks show up for entrepreneurs, sort of in their everyday decisions?
They show up in, like we were talking about, undercharging, avoiding sales calls, downplaying their offers, giving away so much for free. This is something that more and more people have been starting to talk about this, how even just having people make a small investment in something is so much better sometimes than giving away everything for free.
And
Go
what is interesting, and I go back to what I was saying earlier about healthcare, because one thing I actually realized, one of the things that started to make my own mindset around it change, is that people seem to value things differently if they pay for it. So it was just realizing that I wasn't even doing a person a favor if I was giving them something for free.
No. I just think that especially the state that we live in as content creators, service providers, coaches, we already give so much away for free. If you are listening to my podcast, you, I hope, are getting value from listening to this, and it is completely free to you. If you go on my Facebook page, you can scroll through all of my Facebook feed, you can scroll on my Instagram, and I'm giving value away for free, right? And so, why would I continue to discount or give away for free other levels of things? Because as you said, if I'm wanting somebody to really invest in themselves, for me, it's about, and sorry, I'm ranting now a little bit, but for me, it's really about I'm invested in your process. I want you to be invested in your process as well.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
it's a lot easier to discount something if you're just getting it for free.
yeah. And I'm curious, you said you're ranting, I don't think you are, but it it just goes to show it is quite an emotive topic. Why do you think it's so emotive?
Because money is never just about money. It
Mhm,
is money itself, I believe, is neutral. But
mhm,
what happens is that in our cultural, societal, familial conditioning, money is tied to safety, it's tied to freedom, power, love, control, self-worth, right? So when money is tied to all of those things,
mhm,
we're projecting so much meaning onto money, it becomes a mirror back to us. So, like, if we believe that we're not good enough, we avoid charging. If we fear rejection, we avoid selling. If you fear success, you'll spend the money as fast as you make it. Money can bring up every subconscious wound around being seen, being valued, and being safe. And so I think that that's why it's so emotionally charged. And I think until we separate our identity from our income, money will always feel like a test that we're failing, right?
Mhm.
Instead of just a tool that we are allowed to use and hold and receive.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked a bit about this over the last few episodes in terms of the impact of our family relationships on decisions that we make in business. How do you find that that shows up in terms of money?
Yeah, I mean, so we all have money stories, love stories, health stories. We all have these stories that we've inherited from our families. And so if your family struggled financially or resented wealthy people, then you may have internalized beliefs like money causes problems or we're just not those people, right?
Mhm.
No one ever said it. You felt it. I could ask, like, if I went on the street and I served like 100 people and I asked them about what their money stories were in their families, I guarantee that every single person has a money story, right?
Mhm.
So maybe your parents fought about bills, so your success now triggers guilt because it's more than what they had. And the generational imprints run really deep.
'Cause I grew up in church and in a Christian country, and the one of them sort of, like, standout things I can remember hearing is, like, money is the root of all evil, right? And that that sort of, it's almost, like, echoing in my brain, right? And it's yeah, it's like, we talked earlier about how emotive it is. I think it as you said, it kind of comes into every aspect of your life, even if you it's even coming into it in the spiritual aspect in that regard.
Listen, you don't even wanna get me started on what I
I
believe
know.
about the church and money and the church's beliefs about money and how it's all rooted in power and control of people because I think that if you want to if you want to control people, one really easy way to do it is to do it through religion,
Mhm.
and I believe that certain Christian spiritual beliefs they're nonsense, and they just keep people in poverty.
Yeah, yeah. I won't take that any further, but we can have that conversation offline. And I think one of the things that is hard about money, I think I probably mentioned to you a few episodes ago, that I've been going through my own journey with money and exploring my own beliefs around money. And one of the things I realized about it, because it is the currency that is exchanged for just about anything, the roof over your head, the basic things that you need as a person. It made me realize that it felt a lot harder to make those decisions because it felt like my life was on the line when I was making those decisions,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
I had to really sort of pull apart my own beliefs on it in order to kind of see it objectively. So yeah, I definitely understand what you mean. When we started this conversation, you talked about charging for money and also that ability to hold money and feel safe holding money. What does it mean to feel safe when it comes to money?
A big part of it is really if you think of money as being a relationship, I think it's recognizing that there is an actual relationship there between money. I think it means that your nervous system isn't activated every time you interact with money, whether that's looking at your bank account, receiving a payment, raising your rates. I think you have to start looking at the same that you do in a relationship, meaning you have to look at what are the misconceptions that I have about if we're looking at a person, what are the misconceptions that I have about this person? And what are the misconceptions that I have about money?
Mhm.
What are the actual realities about money? Or are these just things that someone told me? Like if someone told me like, "Oh, Sophia is like the worst person in the entire world and this, that, and the other." Well, I have to challenge like, "Oh, like someone told me that about Sophia, but what is my actual and true experience of being in relationship with you?"
Yeah.
And so I think that when you start to do that and you start to shift some of those things, that relationship that you have with money, and it, like I said, it runs deep, means that you can start to receive without guilt, or you can spend without spiraling. You can sell without feeling like you need to pull back or immediately discount, because once you start to shift your relationship with money, you can start to feel safer with it. Brene Brown has this quote: "People are hard to hate close up, move in." And I feel like the same is true about money. And a lot of the reason why people feel unsafe with it is because we don't know, we aren't taught financial literacy. A lot of us, whenever we're growing up, we don't know a lot about money. We don't know a lot about how it works and how it grows and how it can support us. We know a lot of the things that people tell us about it,
Mm.
like how it, people with rich people are evil and money is the root of all evil and all the things, right?
Mm.
So it's like we start out our relationships with money from this place that is built on myths and misconceptions and things handed down to you. But it's like, move in, move closer to your money, learn about it, learn how
Yeah.
you can best use it so you can start to feel safer with it.
And uh, I think because we grew up hearing so much about it, we think we already know, right?
Yeah,
And I think about that when I think about people who go into business. Like if you thought to yourself, I think I'm going to go into business. I'm going to go into business as a therapist or a coach or whatever. You think, okay, I need to learn more about this thing. I need to let me go and study it. Let me go and, take a course, read a book, whatever. But I think we think we already have money figured out when all we have figured out is the stories that we were told and the stories that we have, and there may be other sort of stories and ways to look at it.
absolutely. Yes. So, and I think that that's also part of what keeps us separate from money is that people think that it's going to be, and I have fallen into this trap. People think it's going to be hard and it's going to be convoluted and all of these things. But, the more books that I've started reading about it, the more people that I've started to invest in to help me learn about it, money doesn't have to be hard. Like, we've all learned things. This is literally what I said to Sophia, my partner, this year. I said, this year is going to be a year of more financial literacy for me because I have learned so many things in my life. I have a master's degree. I went through hypnotherapy training, right? Like we've learned how to tie our shoes, ride bikes, drive cars. What would make us think that we could not learn how to manage money? What would make me think that? And it's because some seed was planted that learning about investing is for those kinds of people. Like, oh my gosh, all of these different definitions and terms. And I'm like, you've gone through like how many courses in your life where you have learned definitions of things and you have learned how things operate.
Mm.
So why wouldn't you be able to learn how money operates? It's just a story. It's just a belief, right?
Yeah, I feel like I feel like it's one of those things that has a lot of stories and a lot of beliefs around it that we're not necessarily even aware are stories and beliefs. Like we think it's a fact when it is just something that we've learned and something that's a belief that we can unlearn and then relearn. So, speaking of relearning and rewiring, how do you think we can rewire our money blocks?
Oh, geez. So I think that it requires us to first, again, one of my favorite words, it's like get curious.
Mm. I
What,
feel good too.
right? Like, what does money mean to me? What am I afraid will happen if I make more money? What are my fears about money? Then I think it's about like working with those answers and not against them. And actually, one of my favorite exercises that I've ever done, I am in a course called The Trauma of Money. And
Mhm.
one of the exercises they had us do was writing a letter to money and then swapped places. And I acted as if I was money and I was writing a letter to myself based on the relationship that money has had with me over the years.
Yeah.
And so I think that we start to rewire it by moving in, by getting closer, by better understanding those stories that we tell ourselves about money or those stories that other people have told us about money or
Mhm.
about who we are in relationship to money and what's possible for us, what's available to us.
Yeah. One of since we're talking about our favorite exercises, you're gonna love this one because I think about it every time you talk about awareness and noticing, right? And when I wanted to start changing my relationship with money, I decided to just start by noticing my own patterns, my spending patterns, my habits, my feeling. Gave myself a month. It
Mhm.
was like I wanted to make a change. And first I was like, you know, I used to be a person that would not open my bank statements. I used to, for a long time, I was self employed and I had an accountant he would come over to sort of tax time and he'd just be like, "Oh, no," because I just bring out a box full of unopened bank statements, and he's like, "You haven't even looked, Sophia?" "Nope, I hadn't even looked." Like, I think I'd be embarrassed to say that, but that was the reality of it, right?
Right.
And so I knew that I just needed to observe myself. I
Right.
just needed to notice my spending patterns. What decisions was I making them? When was I making them? How was I feeling when I was making them? Like, I went really granular into this and just kind of made notes about it.
Mhm.
And that allowed me to see patterns that I think I otherwise would not have seen because I was so avoidant before,
Right.
right? So just that noticing, I found that really, really helpful. I did boring things like track my spending and but not just track like what was I buying, but like what was I thinking?
Right. Right. Yeah. And I love what you're saying because I think such a big part of this is separating out your worth and who you are from money. Money does not define who you are. We cannot put a price tag on anyone's, but the problem is that in our cultural society, we have overlapped money and worth. And so it is very activating. And so that one of the best things you can do is like you did, and this is part of the noticing, is separating out here are my money habits, or here are the ways that I'm interacting with money, but I am not my money.
Mm.
My
Yeah.
worth is not my money, right?
Exactly. And so I almost wanted to observe myself, like if I was observing another person, if someone came along and they were living in my house and I was watching I wanted to have that level of detachment from myself, which is quite difficult, especially for me, because, me, I'm always in my own head. I found that process to be so helpful because just seeing how I made decisions and when I made them and what I was thinking when I was making them, it showed me a lot of what I believed, or it kind of started to show me that. Like, why would I make that decision? What must I believe that would cause me to make that decision? And that immediately I could see it so much more clearly than I could when I was in the decision itself.
Right, absolutely. And so this is the thing. We've been talking so much about stories and beliefs about money, about selling, what that means. So one person makes selling mean that you're being sleazy or that you're taking advantage of someone. Another person sees selling as being of deep service to someone, of helping someone see possibility and transformation in their lives. Those two people are living in different realities. Those two people show up to their businesses in completely different ways. And here's the beautiful thing, and this is the work that I do with my clients. We create these beliefs or we have these stories, and because we've created them, that means that we get to change them.
Mm,
If you notice, right? If you notice, and I always say this, people have heard me say this in my coaching episodes, create stories all the time. At some point, we believed in, the tooth fairy, the Easter bunny, or Santa Claus. That's a story that we believed. And at some point, we decided that that no longer served us. So we changed that. We can do the exact same things with our beliefs about selling, with our beliefs about money, is we can say, I've created these beliefs or someone handed me these beliefs. Do they actually work for me? Do they actually serve me? If not, how do I change them? And that's the first step. And then once you realize, what do I actually want to believe about selling? What do I actually want to believe about money? Then you can start to take small steps that are more in alignment with those
Mm.
stories than the old ones, right?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Well, we went really deep, so I think that's a great place to wrap up. Before we go though, if someone listening to this episode is feeling like, oh yeah, it's me selling sales, I really struggle with that. Where's a good place for them to start?
I think it's honestly just what I said. I think that it's looking at the stories. I think that it's every time that you interact with money, noticing what the story is, write it down, voice note it to yourself. Something you have to start with awareness. You have to know what the stories are because here's what happens is your stories and your beliefs create your feelings and your actions. And so, if you want to change the outcome, if you want to change how you feel about money, if you want to change how you're interacting with money, if you want to change how you feel about sales, you want to change, how you're showing up and selling, you have to look at the stories and the beliefs. You have to start to change those, and then you have to start to take action in
Mhm.
in those new stories. So, you know, beating a dead horse here, but it always starts with awareness. It always starts with awareness. That's where we take our power back is noticing the stories and the beliefs that we already have around something and seeing and questioning them. Are they working for us? If not, what new stories and beliefs do I want to have?
I think having gone through that process myself, I can say that it is a really a powerful way to get a look at your own stories and start to, because I think you can't start to change those stories if you don't know what they are.
Right. Absolutely. So, the last thing I want to say is that money and sales blocks are very emotional and they're very layered because, as I said, they're often not just about money. And so, this is really one of those areas where there are certain things that I believe that the story is easier to shift
Mhm.
because it's not so deeply ingrained. Money is not one of those areas. Money is a very deeply ingrained familial, cultural, societal. It's entwined in so many ways in the fabric of who we are that I want to just tell people to be gentle with yourself because it's probably going to bring up a lot of emotions, but also be really patient with yourself. This is not one of those things. Not many things are. Some things are easier to shift than others, but this is not one of those things that's going to shift overnight. This is one of those things that you're going to have to invest time into shifting your beliefs and your stories about money. Like you said, you tracked it for a month. You tracked it for a month before you did anything, right? And so it's going to take time, but I think that it's so worth it because it's so tied up in how we feel about ourselves and how we
Mm.
interact with the world. So that's all I wanted to say before we close up.
I think that's definitely something that I would agree with. I look forward to hearing any feedback you have on this episode or any of the episodes. I think this is the one that's probably gotten the most, at least for me anyway, because it's something I've been working on myself. I feel like this is the episode that I have gone quite deep on in my life, and so I'm glad we were able to discuss it, dispel some myths, and start talking about it, particularly for people who are selling stuff. Like, as you say, go easy on yourself. It's a deep one.
Right. I mean, obviously, I feel like I got a little fiery because I feel so strongly about it. I feel very strongly about helping people break through their money blocks because I really do believe that when good hearted people who are helpers and healers have more money, that people's lives can be changed through that. And I know that there are lots of other ways and that money isn't the be all and end all. But I do know that money has a certain level of power and can get you access to certain things. And I think that again, the more service-oriented, good-hearted healers who have access to funds and can be sitting at the tables where decisions are being made about things, I think that that changes so much.
Yeah.
So, before we go, if you saw or heard yourself in this episode, if you know that you have deeply rooted money or sales blocks that you need to shift or change, number one, I would love to support you in that. So you can use the link in the show notes or go to shiftyourstorypodcast.com and schedule a connection call to see if we would be a good fit. I also want to invite you to head to theallyrose.co or click the link in the show notes to take the quiz and discover your dominant subconscious business block. You'll also get a blueprint that will walk you step by step through the process to begin to shift it. And I promise you, if money blocks, sales blocks have been holding you back, there is a safer, more powerful way through them. I hope that this episode was helpful. Thank you so much for joining us. We're sending you so much love and gratitude. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Shift Your Story, Change Your Life podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to send me a message on social media. I'm at the Allie Rose on both Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to be coached on a future episode or explore what it would look like to work with me one-on-one, head over to shiftyourstorypodcast.com. And if you never want to miss an episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review. It helps more people find this work. Until next time, keep shifting, keep growing, and most importantly, I want you to remember that your story isn't set in stone. You always have the power to shift it.